Good morning to everybody. Dr. Glenda Fortes, Vice President for Higher Education, Miriam College, Dr. Maria Lourdes Baybay, Director of the Open Distance Learning and Asian University Digital Resource Network. Friends, thank you for inviting me to speak in this important occasion. The topic is very dear to me because I really think we have to expand the frontiers of knowledge in the 21st century. My title is Heritage in Cyberspace. What I will do is I will try to compress my talk so we'll have some time for discussion. Two boundaries are broken down in our world today. First is the boundary between actual space and virtual space. Necessarily, the classroom today encompasses not only face-to-face interactions between the teacher and the students, but likewise interactions in cyberspace. Lessons are learned not only from library books and from handouts, but likewise from materials available online. The second boundary to break down is the distinction between library, an archive, and a museum. Archives as repositories of important documents are now online. The public can read these documents as easily as they would a library book. At the same time, the uniqueness of museums as repositories of non-print information, whether visual or auditory, that can only be visited in real space, has faded. Cyberspace allows visual and auditory materials to be enjoyed online. Aware of this transformation, we in the Ateneo have developed two sites that promote Filipino heritage. One is a site for Philippine epics and ballads, and another a site for Philippine architectural heritage. In this paper, I will describe each site and its objectives. Afterwards, I would like to raise a question about ethical issues connected with learning in cyberspace. But let me first highlight the significance of each site. A site for Philippine epics and ballads. I will show some portions of the site later on, after I go briefly through the rationale and the description of the site. Okay, there are several reasons why it is important to have this site. One reason is that oral literature, being communally created, unlike written literature, which is individually created, can tell us a lot about how a community interprets the world. Certainly in plotting strategies of development or in defining who we are, we should listen to how particular communities interpret themselves. A second reason is that every language affirms an interpretation of the world. As such, therefore, every language has value in itself, for it opens another way of being human. Moreover, a language has added value because it may encode a unique way of understanding the ecosystem. I say this with reference to Miriam, which is well known for its environmental studies. Given that the entire global ecosystem is now under threat, we should look at how particular groups have interpreted the relations between inanimate nature and living forms. Let me elaborate on this. Every people takes a stance vis-a-vis their surrounding environment. In prioritizing a basic technological practice while de-emphasizing others, they highlight aspects of the ecosystem that would escape the attention of other peoples. To give an example, let us take a look at the sea-dwelling Sama people, Sama di Laut, of the Sud Archipelago. Most of their life is spent in houseboats. According to the French anthropologist Alain Martineau, they make use of the wealth of the surrounding sea, particularly the coral reefs, by using various fishing techniques. As they move about the coral reef, they look into the depths of the sea for orientation because the islets are out of sight. As a result, they have a vocabulary that neatly identifies different parts of the coral reef. Talusan Soang, which means more or less deep channels cutting through the reef. Gusung, sandbanks. Halo, more or less deep catchments. Supak, pinnacles. Unas, seagrasses. Kangan, stretches of dead corals. Selang-selang, very deep depressions. This would not be easy to translate into English or Tagalog, and I suppose into other Philippine languages, which are not as maritime-oriented. And yet the precision would help all of us wishing to understand a coral reef much better. A third reason why an archive of epics and ballads is needed is that children are best educated in their mother tongue at the primary level. Because they're comfortable, they can be creative. Also called Acta, the Pinatubo Negritos are pygmies who live on the slopes of Mount Pinatubo, a volcano thought dormant, but which exploded in 1989. They speak a dialect of the Batolan Samba language. When anthropologist Robert Fox studied their ethnobotany in 1952, this dialect was spoken by Christian lowlanders in the municipality of Batolan, the province of Zambales, which is a Luzon province. Though reputedly foragers, they largely practiced slash and burn cultivation as their main form of subsistence. Fox notes that they are acute observers of their environment. In contrast to their surrounding neighbors, they have a vast knowledge of plants and animals. Not only do they distinguish them by appearance, they also know the habits and behavior of each. Their approach is eminently empirical. Says Fox, quote, "Many times I've seen a Negrito who, when not being certain of the identification of a particular plant, will taste the fruit, smell the leaves, break and examine the stem, comment upon its habitat, and only after all of this pronounce whether he did or did not know the plant." Unquote. He also adds, most Negrito men can with ease enumerate the specific or descriptive names of at least 450 plants. Incredible. 75 birds, most of the snakes, fish, insects, and animals, and of even 20 species of ants. Moreover, each Negrito man can give a description of the colors, habits, foods, calls, etc. of all the animal, insect, and bird life known to him. I dare say that the Pinatubo Negrito would not be as insightful if he had been forced to think in a borrowed language like Tagalog, which of course is the dominant language of Luzon and is now the basis for the national language. Given these three concerns, we can better appreciate the potential contribution of the EPICS project at the Ateneo de Manila University. What is an epic? An epic is a narrative that relates the great deeds of a hero. Often this is in verse and is chanted before a community for long spans of time, like overnight or for several nights. The communal oral nature of the chanting helps plant its underlying ideology or vision in the minds of all those who listen. Often the plot centers around the primordial theme, the hero's quest for a bride. This quest, of course, is at the very heart of the life of any community, including our own. For without this quest, there is no possibility of survival. In the process of narrating these deeds, an epic does two things. First, it defines the roles and obligations expected of men and women, young and old, in the community. For the idealized hero and his bride-to-be are located in a variety of situations such as growing up, relating to parents and relatives, entering adolescence, facing an enemy, courtship, rearing children, and braving death. Second, an epic contains useful information about the natural environment. Indeed, it may deliberately list information as to which plants and animals are important for healing the sick, or how a weapon is to be made. What makes an epic or any piece of oral literature different from written poems is that creativity occurs continually, both in the singer and in the audience. The singer creates a new variant of the tale when he or she sings. At the same time, the audience itself reconfigures the verses within themselves, and through their reaction may inspire the singer to highlight certain aspects of the plot, or to create new lines by the hero, or even to bring in new information. In turn, when sung, an epic helps an endangered language. How? Because the endangered language becomes alive in the very exchange between the singer and the audience. Okay, because of all this, the French anthropologist Nicole Rebel conceived of a project that would record the epics of various ethnic groups all over the Philippines. Dr. Nicole Rebel has done 3 decades of field work, specifically in the island of Palawan, among the Palawan people. But because she's familiar also with oral literature from other parts of the Philippines, she decided to embark on a project of trying to rescue as many of the epics as possible. She had financial support from the Direction Générale de Relations Culturelles Scientifiques et Techniques of the French Foreign Affairs Department, the French Embassy in the Philippines, and my own university at Ateneo de Manila. In 1992, she started a tri-dimensional epic archive, oral, audiovisual, and computerized, of the archipelago's epics. What she did was she spent part of the year for almost a decade traveling all over the country, enlisting the help of local experts from Luzon to Mindanao, gathering what could be gathered. What resulted is the Ateneo Epics and Ballads Archives. This collection can be accessed at http://epics.ateneo.edu. It has these characteristics. Every epic is recorded and is partially filmed, as chanted through audio tapes and video tapes. A transcription of the narrative is established. Translations of most of the epics are done into either Filipino, English, or French, or all 3. Most of the epics are accompanied by other videos or still photographs. Commentaries by scholars on an epic or epics within a particular ethno-linguistic community are done. Some of the commentaries have in fact never been published before. The collection is divided into 15 baul, or virtual chests. In order to indigenize the archives, Dr. Ravel deliberately chose the word baul, which means chest. This is very appropriate because each baul stores the linguistic and literary archives of a particular ethno-linguistic group. The dimensions of the baul vary. A baul will have more entries than another simply because its ethno-linguistic community has yielded more collected epics. These are, I just want to show you some lines, some pictures from the baul. So the Ifugao Baul has several epics. One epic is about Aliguyon, son of Amtalao. So these are photographs taken by Nicole Rebel herself, and the other photographs there. These are some of the lines. Here are other photographs showing the houses, the courtyards. Oops, I'm sorry, it's jumping. A photo of the famous rice terraces. Bukidnon is also represented among the 15 baul. So here is an epic from the Talandig. This particular episode depicts the exploits of a highborn lady who decides to learn embroidery in another community, another neighboring community. So she goes there, spends several months learning embroidery and sharing knowledge with them. You can see in the process actually, the hearer learns how valuable traditional embroidery is, and also learns how to put on the traditional dress. Okay. Another epic is from Palawan, from the Kudaman. The epic of Kudaman in Palawan is from the Palawan people. This was, of course, a project dear to Nicole Rebel because she personally transcribed this. So this particular episode depicts an important festival centering on the gong. As you know, festivals among many peoples in the Philippines are festivals that last for a long time, and they're occasions not only for singing and dancing, but also for renewing community ties. The drawing is by Anna Fair. So under the presidency of Father Bienvenido Nebres, the Ateneo de Manila's University Archives in Quezon City, Metro Manila, became the custodian of a growing collection of epics. An agreement to this effect was signed in 1995. The collection was open to public use upon completion of a form. In 2010, custodianship passed over to the Ateneo de Manila's Rizal Library, which is the university library. Here are kept both the hard copies of the archives and the virtual archives. To inaugurate the virtual archives, Ateneo de Manila hosted an international conference called Songs of Memory, an international conference on epics and ballads, in January 20 to 22 this year. Experts from Europe, Asia, and the US came to discuss how epics and ballads could be archived using contemporary techniques, and also how they could be interpreted in depth. Copies of the epics are also stored in centers abroad, at the Bibliothèque Nationale in France, at the International Sound Library for Oral Traditions at the Academy of Westphalia in Düsseldorf. These recorded epics can enhance the prestige of each vernacular language vis-a-vis the dominant languages of the Philippines. Because they have been written down and translated into two international languages, this gives them parity. They also create a feeling of solidarity when young members of the language community, like students in the city, study and appreciate these narratives. At Ateneo, I use the epics as required reading for a course on intangible heritage, orality, memory, creativity, which I co-teach with Dr. Levina Garcia of the Philosophy Department, Dr. Nicole Ravel, and Dr. Gary Levilles of the Filipino Department. With few exceptions, the students read the epics in translation. However, as members of the dominant language communities in the islands, they at least begin to realize that there are other language communities whose heritage should be cherished. The archive is dynamic. New material can and will be included. Moreover, the configuration can be altered. For example, in 2009, the Ateneo Cultural Laboratory, under me, recorded long chants of several hours at Tayabas, Quezon Province, in honor of 1-meter-high stone crosses found in the rural hamlets. These chants, plus the videos accompanying them, should enter the archive eventually. Let us go now to another site, a site for memorable Philippine architecture. We take architecture for granted, yet, when not well made, architecture can create discomfort on several levels, unconscious most of the time. Conversely, when well made, architecture shelters us effectively, while at the same time offering us aesthetic pleasure, even as we use it. Let me just show you some pictures of the kinds of structures we have inputted. Tondo is a part of the city that we would not normally associate with architecture, but yet it has beautiful architecture in well-preserved neighborhoods. I hope this inventory we're doing will enable Filipinos and Metro Manilans to dispel certain prejudices they have about parts of the city. Like, because Tondo is a neighborhood, is a district, the biggest district in Manila, which is close to the pier area. Parts of it are really spoiled by huge slum colonies, but other parts are actually middle class until now, like this one. Very charming details. And this is the owner, who could very well migrate to other parts of the city but prefers to live there because it's a family house, and indeed it's a very comfortable house to live in. With their post-1950 structures have low ceilings and small window openings. They trap the heat, compelling us to buy air-conditioning units, whose exhaust contributes to global warming. In contrast, the builders of traditional structures were often sensitive to their surroundings. Aside from insisting on high ceilings and steeply pitched roofs, they developed a system of passive ventilation which still works today in our cities. Vents in the roof eaves, wide eaves, generous overhangs over the windows, tall wide windows with panels that slide and therefore allowing more breeze. Extra windows between the window sill and the floor sill to allow the breeze to cool the floor and one's feet. Ground story walls that are elevated. And therefore allow the winds to come in to cool the floor. Floors of wood that are cool but not cold, and therefore comfortable to sleep on, unlike cement or marble. These houses are also admirably constructed to withstand the perennial threat in the ring of fire, earthquakes. On the verge as we are in Metro Manila, on that once every 2 centuries massive earthquake, alarm bells are now ringing. Some sectors are urging us to view structures older than 20 years with suspicion. And yet our traditional architecture developed in response precisely to our unsteady ground. Roofs in urban houses in Luzon and Visayas, unlike those in Southeast Asia or Latin America, are of metal rather than tile, precisely because of centuries of experience. Because we found out after the great earthquakes of 1863 and 1880 that it was better to have roofs either of flat tile or better of metal, because it's the heavy tile roof that collapses in first. So roof trusses in houses are supported not by stone walls that are rigid, but by wooden posts that sway with the ground's rhythm. It's too bad though that many insist on calling our traditional wood and stone houses Spanish, but even Spaniards and Spanish Americans prefer to call them Filipino. Aside from being functional, traditional architecture is attractive even when modest. Let me give you an example of the Mabini Shrine. There's of course a more traditional form of house than the one I showed you a while ago. That style developed in the more densely concentrated urban centers, the earlier house from Tondo. But however, more traditional, of course, is this house, which has an even longer formation behind it. Is the house of thatch and wood. This architecture is attractive even when modest. Their builders may not have gone to architecture schools, but their builders had a very good sense of proportion. They shopped for woods and metals that lasted, and were craftsmen who loved their craft. In our interviews with people who own such houses, they keep saying that, in fact, it's the older parts of their houses, made of Malawi wood, made of metal with thick cage, that actually are more durable than those parts of the house which use more contemporary skills and materials. So, let me just show you briefly. So it's a beautiful entry, very simple, with just a few trims over the stairway. The roof is made of sawali, it's coffered, which it's graceful, at the same time it's very practical. It actually allows the heat to escape upwards. This is the house of the great patriot Mabini, who was responsible for the constitution of the Philippine Republic, as well as he was actually the ideologue who reflected on the meaning of revolution and its justification. Here is another house from Balik-Balik, also in São Paulo. Again, very modest, but very comfortable to live in. The windows are of sliding shutters. I think this one has shell windows. I noticed in the program that you'll be taking a tour of San Miguel, the district of San Miguel. Now that is a more upscale community because that community is sprung around the presidential palace. The houses of the great and the powerful are also included in our inventory, but I decided not to show it because I think it's important to see that even the houses of the more modest are also worth saving. Finally, this is a house, another house in Sampaloc. It's done by an anonymous craftsman, but look how much care is lavished on the trims of the overhang. The overhang itself is very practical because it protects against wind and rain. But you know, each detail is lovingly crafted. And then there are those traditional decorations over the window called the espejo between the roof eaves and the overhang. This is practical again because it allows in more light. Okay, the website is http://haligi.net. Haligi is the Philippine word for column or post. It's a joint research project by the Institute of Philippine Culture and the Society for the Preservation of Philippine Culture, which aims to help in preserving and promoting Philippine architectural heritage through various endeavors. So, it contains the following: a compendium of literature, research initiatives, national and local legislation, conservation models from other countries, and a continuously growing inventory of heritage architecture in Manila and other parts of Metro Manila. The project is headed by architect Eric Acpedono, a German Ghanaian who's married to a Filipina, while its architectural inventory and compendium research teams are headed by me and by Dr. Sarina Saloma of my department, respectively. So the compendium, for example, features literature that consists of detailed and summarized materials in Philippine heritage architecture. So basically, there's a bibliography of what books you can read if you want to know more about Philippine architecture. There's another section that talks about current and past research projects on heritage architecture done by individuals and other institutions in the Philippines. Then you have also a list of legislation, such as national laws, as well as local laws. So it's important to realize that, in fact, although in a certain sense the national government is not moving fast enough, in certain municipalities, in fact, things are moving quite rapidly. So for example, there's an Naga City Ordinance which creates a task force for the preservation and restoration of all historical and cultural buildings and structures in the city of Naga. It even offers incentives. Finally, the compendium has a director of centers for research and heritage organizations currently protecting and promoting architectural heritage in the Philippines. Now, what I've shown you is another part of the website because it has an inventory of heritage architecture. Since 2008, I've headed a team that has been patiently inventorying heritage structures all over Manila, district by district, street by street. It's an amazing, it's an interesting experience. You get to know Manila quite well. From Tondo to Malate, from Intramuros all the way to Santa Ana. Okay. And then we're closing that this month, in fact, to come out with a book. And now we're heading towards the other phase, which is much shorter, which is the inventory, heritage sites and structures in Metro Manila, from Caloocan to Valenzuela, Makati, down to Alabang. Okay, this inventory is crucial for our Cultural Heritage Studies program, which I head, because it provides basic information to our students in two core subjects: Introduction to Cultural Heritage and Culture in the Census. Both subjects are taught every year. Let me now address you with a question about ethics. Okay, so it's through two initiatives that emerged in Ateneo de Manila. One formally sponsored by the Office of the President, namely the Epics and Ballads Archives. The other organized by the Institute of Philippine Culture and Society for Preservation of Philippine Culture. The first involves the preservation and dissemination of intangible heritage. The other one, the preservation and popularization of tangible heritage. But there are certain there's an ethical issue, in fact, which I think we should address. In the information age, a mixture of both pressure and enthusiasm are impelling many to share the fruits of research with the public, most of it anonymous necessarily. The theory is that capital should be accessible to all, for indeed information is capital. But allow me to say that there is another side to this story. For processed information is also the product of labor, which is not always paid for. In the case of the epics, for instance, the singers of tales are often poor people whose singing is not compensated. Writing interpretations of their tales are scholars who have invested years of their life in the effort. It seems to us unfair that information stored in the virtual archive can be easily downloaded by anyone, and worse, plagiarized by the unscrupulous for monetary gain. On the other hand, it's also unfair to just let this information store within a small circle. So, hence, I would like to address to you this question. What would be a necessary protocol to permit access to both sites while allowing these sites to be protected? In fact, because of this concern, recently the Ateneo Epics and Ballads Archives was temporarily restricted because a more satisfactory protocol was needed. It turned out one of the technicians told Nicole Ravel that actually a lot of this can be plagiarized. So she had to restrict it. But we're trying to work out a protocol. And I think we have to do the same also for haligi.net, at least for the photos. So we would appreciate your advice on the possible protocol.